Dan Roberts here in the FOS studio in New York, and I've got Russ Brandon of UFL, the United Football League. Russ, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about spring football.
Let's do it.
You guys have wrapped your inaugural merge season. We'll talk about the numbers, some solid numbers there. That season ended in June. But first, if we rewind, I remember quite well that period of time, maybe 2018, 2019, when all of a sudden a number of football leagues were either coming back from the dead or launching anew. There was USFL, XFL, and UFL is the merged entity of those two leagues. There was AAF, Alliance of American Football, Arena Football. And the argument was always like, well, look at the fact that the NFL dominates the news cycle all year. People want more football, more. And I always wondered, but is the appetite here limitless? And maybe we're seeing some of the answer lately.
I think so. Thanks for having me. It's been a great opportunity for us to launch the UFL. And when we look at it from that standpoint, to your point, go back to XFL 2020. Excellent business model, a lot of great people running it, sat within the WWE universe, came out like gangbusters, and then the pandemic hits. And that league goes away. Fox, led by Eric Shanks and team, bring back the IP of the USFL, do a tremendous job. Redbird Capital, led by Jerry Cardinal, Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, they buy the IP of the XFL out of bankruptcy. We put a team together. We were patient as we built it. There were a lot of people thought we would rush to get out that first year in 22, but we wanted to take a very patient approach to how we built this league. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about the expenses of running these leagues.
Yeah.
And then you saw two disparate leagues going at one time, obviously with the USFL and the XFL. The business model is a little bit different. And I came out of a board meeting in 2023 and was told, hey, let's go see Eric Shanks and talk about the potential of a merger. And walked in there in early July and said, this makes a lot of sense, and spent the whole summer, fall, getting to the point of merging both of these leagues and creation of the UFL, which in 3 days, it's our first birthday. So we're not even, as we're sitting here, we're not even a year old.
And in hindsight, does it kind of make you think, well, of course the two couldn't both exist separately and succeed? And I mentioned an Alliance of American Football, that one didn't work out. I mean, there is a limit to the appetite for all your football.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, it all starts with the product. And we were very fortunate to have a very good run in 23 with Legacy XFL, with the product we put on the field. I feel very similar about what the USFL was doing under Daryl Johnson's tutelage with the product. When we brought that together, just seeing the athletes that we were able to put together in our league, out of our 400 players that rostered in the league last year, I think 346 of those athletes had been in an NFL camp, rostered, had been involved in the league. So just the quality of play, the quality of the quarterback play, our coaches. When you've got Bob Stoops and Wade Phillips,
I was going to mention them,
and Skip Holtz, who's won 3 championships in a row, and we just added Ken Wisenhunt, Reggie Barlow, Curtis Johnson. I can go on and on about our coaches, and then their staffs, and how we have also built our performance science departments and our nutrition and our athletic training. We are very, very focused. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about our hub model in Arlington, but very focused on giving our athletes the like experience that they've experienced in college, and many of them have experienced in the NFL. So seeing 42 of our athletes in the National Football League, which is over 10% of our league, is very fulfilling for all of us.
And is that the explicit goal? I mean, it's not a D league for the NFL, or maybe if it kind of functions a little bit as that, then that's a happy accident or a fine. You don't want to necessarily overtly label yourselves as that, although it is something that doesn't exist. I mean, the NBA has the G League, and the NFL really doesn't have such a thing.
Listen, we are our standalone professional spring football league. However, we also know that 95 to 99% of our athletes' goal is to eventually get back to the NFL if that opportunity arises. We are a league of opportunity. It's very fulfilling, as I mentioned, for us to see these athletes achieve their goals if that's what they want to achieve. We work very closely with the National Football League. Troy Vincent, Dawn Aponte, the football operations department, when it comes to technology, innovation, player development, how do we assist the underserved populations in our game? We have a female official on every crew in our league. We work very closely with officiating. So that relationship is, some of these leagues in the past have run from the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm a former longtime NFL guy. We ran to the NFL because our goal is to advance the game of football. Our goal is to provide opportunities. And just seeing that, like I use the example all the time as well. Zach Woodfin, the UFL's head of strength and conditioning, going into year one. We weren't in Arlington last year for 24 hours, and he gets the call that he's becoming the head of strength and conditioning with the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah. Bye.
Could not be more thrilled for this guy. And we've seen that across the board in the verticals in our sport that, again, I get as excited for those individuals as our players.
Okay, let's talk ratings, actually. Let's talk about the numbers for the inaugural UFL season. So, averaged 850,000 viewers per game. Now, the network broadcasts averaged 945,000 viewers. And then the championship game, 1.596 million viewers on Fox, which it's worth putting in context here. That's more than the first 3 games of the WNBA Finals got. So, this is not nothing here. I mean, we're kind of proving out the model that people want, spring football. As you look to the future and kind of currently it's a very, I don't want to say fragmented, but you've got games on multiple networks. You've had some ESPN, you've had some Fox, some streaming. What does the future look like in terms of the rights deal for you guys, and what is kind of a pie-in-the-sky goal?
Well, we have incredible partners when it comes to Fox and when it comes to Disney, and what Eric Shanks has done and Brooke Magnus on the ESPN side. I think the big number there too is I think 78% of our games have been on broadcast over-the-air television. So to have that type of platform is really, really powerful for us. I can't say enough about the relationship between both parties, and the ESPN weigh in, the Fox weigh in, how we are able to be very transparent in a few key areas when it comes to our command center, if you will. So our viewers can see the dialogue between the coaches and our officials, and when you have the grand poobahs of officiating and Dean Blandino and Mike Pereira, running our league, it's pretty powerful. To see the player-to-coach communication, which we have a pretty robust amount of individuals that are tied into that communication, so our consumer can see that dialogue between the coach and the quarterback. I joke all the time. I go watch the TV copy after every single game of the Birmingham Stallions because I can't get enough of watching Skip Holtz communicate with his quarterbacks. It should be a teaching tape for all coaches, quite frankly. And just as how we continue to build that side of it when it comes to innovation and technology and how we bring that to the consumer, I think we've got some pretty cool things that we're going to be unveiling this year as well.
What have you taken away from how other leagues have done this? I mean, it's funny, we had Paul Rabel in here recently, another kind of upstart sports league, Premier
Rabes
League
does
lacrosse.
a great job.
Yeah, and in many of those cases, a newer upstart, smaller league just goes all in with one distributor. It's either we're on ESPN Plus or we're on NBC Sports Peacock, or all our games are on Fox. And like I said, it's very much more an NFL approach. You've got games on multiple broadcasters and networks. And especially when you look at things like altcasts, the success of the Manning cast,
Yes.
and it's almost just, it's more football, more people talking about it. I want to watch the coach version instead and be in the coach's room.
Right.
What kind of inspiration have you taken away from there? I know you guys have also had an ESPN Plus show where you talk about the league.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, you can't learn enough. What Rabes is doing with PLL is outstanding. What Pete Murray we're doing with PFL. What Jess is doing with NWSL. I mean, so proud to see how they're continuing to grow. Our model, listen, we have a great partner in Fox, who's obviously a big partner with us along with Disney. Last year during the merger, at this time last year, still on this date, we were not an entity. So when we hit the ground, we were drinking out of the proverbial fire hose, just to get operationally up and running. And when we talk about what we learned a lot from COVID, unfortunately, and what the NBA did, and
WNBA.
what they did with the hub, and it was the inspiration for how we built our league, to have all 8 teams in one location starting in mid-February, and we'll be there through, 2 teams will be there through mid to late June, to charter 2 football teams on one plane to and from market. I would have told you it's absurd, right? But it's a different way of thinking, different way of doing things, a different way to manage your P&L, and have a great setup. We all know what Texas football is. No one really knows what Texas football is until you live it and you see these high school facilities, which are nicer than a lot of, 1 AA or small D1 facilities. So our athletes have a tremendous experience, but it was basically these leagues are hard to run and they're expensive. So trying to mitigate that as we continue to build what our model ultimately may be, which we still don't know, is a really good opportunity for us to go in market. We have teams on the ground in each market, business teams, think AA, AAA baseball front offices, that are on the ground 365 days a year, sort of promoting and singing the tune of what that brand means in that marketplace.
Yeah, you mentioned the ownership and Redbird, and Redbird is our majority owner at FOS. When we kind of zoom out and look across the landscape, you mentioned all the upstart leagues, NWSL, which has a lot of new investment as well. We're seeing huge kind of new investment sources flooding into sports, not just pro, but increasingly at the college level and private equity getting in there. What do you make of that influx? I mean, buying teams as a great investment is nothing new. I mean, that's always been the case. I sometimes joke, nothing is a guaranteed investment, but owning a piece of a pro sports franchise is pretty close. But it definitely went into overdrive in the last couple of years, especially with these upstart leagues and with women's sports.
Yeah, it's amazing. I used to say that you sat in an owners meeting in the NFL, if you used the word betting or gambling, there was an ejection button that they'd hit and you'd be thrown out of the room. I felt the same way about private equity when they used to talk about, that'll never happen. And it's amazing the evolution and watching it change in real time and seeing what these leagues are doing and how the consumer, especially the young consumer, is taking to these leagues. Watching TGL the other day. You know what I mean? Just,
interesting.
I'm like, wow, we're watching a simulator.
Right.
Right? And you're like, I've got kids that are in their very early 20s and they can't get enough of it. Right, so, and just how I've watched that from their eyes, whether it's soccer, Premier League, and some of the startups that what they're doing, like we mentioned with PLL and NWSL, and what the WNBA has done.
Yep, using UFL for Army recruiting, it seemed like a kind of natural partnership and brand alignment. And then the Army said that either The Rock didn't do enough posts about it, or I think it was like an $11 million sponsorship deal.
Yeah, I mean, we have great relationships still with the Army, General George and Colonel Butler and that whole team. And, I think we worked through all that, and I think we're all in a good place.
Got it. That's settled.
Yes.
2 more for you. As we talk about the TV landscape, very interesting lately, the narrative around NBA ratings. And the numbers kind of came back enough on Christmas Day that now it's only down 3% compared to last year. And by the way, the NFL regular season also down a very small amount, 2.2% dip versus last year. And everyone, makes a lot when the ratings are either up big, down big year over year. But in the NBA's case, it really prompted quite a narrative, and everyone had a take. Too many threes, or load management, or the product just isn't good enough. And suffice to say, it's like both things can be true. Probably too much is being made of it. this league just signed a $77 billion new broadcast deal, but also maybe Adam Silver has some things to change or improve.
I call it overreaction Monday, with that. Listen, if anyone thinks that there's anything wrong with the NBA, flip on the Thunder and the Cavaliers last night or 2 nights ago and watch that product. I think Adam does an incredible job. I think the NBA is an incredible property. And listen, I heard the same thing about a 2.2% decrease in the NFL, and that 73 of the top 100 instead of 90 in the top 100. I think you have to look at the full picture. And there's no greater commissioner than Roger Goodell. So what they continue to do and build on that front, I don't think we have to worry too much about the NFL or the NBA.
Yeah, I was going to end on asking about the current season. I'm big on disclosing your biases. I'm a Patriots fan, so maybe I'm just focused on the fact that it wasn't the most exciting season for my team.
Yeah, listen, you had a hell of a run.
Yeah, I will take it.
I was in Buffalo. Tom Brady was 31-3 against us in my career. So.
I'd be fine with it if we're bad for 10 more seasons. But what do you make of the storylines this season, either on the field or also off the field? I mean, it's exciting that the Lions are so good. I think that's cool to every average fan. But at the same time, it might just be chugging toward another inevitable Chiefs three-peat.
Yeah, it's amazing. What Andy and the Hunt family and Mark Donovan, the president, who's amazing, have built theirs incredible. And is incredible. And to even think that they're in a position to maybe go for that third. I think they're going to have a tough road getting through Buffalo. That's, I'm a little bit biased.
I was going to say a little bit of bias.
A little bit, but, I think Buffalo in Lamar's playing out of his mind. And they're on a whole different trajectory, I think, this year as well. I think those 3 teams are going to be the last 3 standing, and how it all plays out is anyone's guess. It's a little like Brady.
On the AFC side.
On the AFC side. Yep. It's a little like Brady that anytime you think you want to bet against him, you say to yourself, why did I bet against him, right?
Right.
That's with Mahomes.
Yep.
On the, Ralph Wilson used to say, who was our owner at the Bills, he used to say when people would say, how are you going to do this year? He'd say, ask John Marzo. And John was our head of medical operations at the Bills, right? So it's usually very, very linear when you look at, say, okay, look at the team standing and they're the healthiest. What Detroit's doing is amazing. With 16 guys on IR, 13 of them on defense, what Dan Campbell and his staff have done is incredible. He's got 2 future head coaches in Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson on that staff. If I was Philly, I'd be worried as hell about Green Bay this week, coming in there. Hurts hasn't practiced a lot. What Howie Roseman continues to do with that roster is amazing. And then, obviously it's terrible tragedies, what's going on in LA.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see where that game is played. Yep. But that's going to be a hell of a matchup. And, Kevin O'Connell may be the best coach in football. What he continues to do out there, and obviously how Sam's playing as well. So I think the theater and the drama is right there again. But it's going to be very interesting to see where it plays out this year.
Super Bowl matchup prediction? This is sounding like Bills-Lions.
Buffalo, Detroit.
Okay. We'll see. Russ, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.